Good morning, East Goshen. Good morning, Philadelphia. And good morning to the world. It's a crisp and beautiful East Goshen morning. The greater Philadelphia area has long been described as the garden capital of our country. We're standing today in one of the most beautiful private gardens in our entire region. This garden belongs to Phillip Watson, founder of Phillip Watson Designs, and a longtime garden expert on QVC. Phillip is a world-famous horticulturalist and landscaper with distinguished clients and many thousands of Facebook fans. So even though this is a private garden, it is already known and loved by adoring fans through the many ways Phillip shares his expertise from his own yard. Phillip has graciously agreed to accept appointment as East Goshen Township's Gardener Laureate and has many tips to share with us today.
Good morning, Phillip Watson here in East Goshen, and I made this my home maybe 10, 11 years ago. I'm originally from the Deep South by way of New York, so I've been all over the place, and I love gardening here. This is a beautiful area to garden successfully because if you choose carefully and you site things carefully, you can have camellias, you can also have conifers, the best of both worlds, and it's just about being sensible. And the way I look at it these days, I'll be 70 next summer, so I'm making my garden a little different than the way I did when I was a kid, is it's not perfect, but it's not nothing. And I want more pretty and less work. Let me introduce you to the monkey puzzle tree, which is my favorite tree in the garden. This is native to Chile, Araucaria oricana, and it's evergreen. It's very prickly. It looks kind of like a Norfolk Island pine. If it's sited properly here in East Goshen, it will work well. In fact, I've even got one growing in Greenwich, Connecticut. It doesn't like wet feet, so I planted it on a mound. If you've got a high water table in your garden, which a lot of us do, things will die because they'll look good for 3 years and then the roots get down in the water and then it's a mess. Planting things on a mound is always a great idea, and you can have things like this that are unusual. This one, by the way, likes full sun, well-drained soil, and just in average condition like that. And I planted daffodils around the base of it, mainly because the deer won't eat the daffodils. And you think, yeah, but all that yellowing foliage that's going to come on later, how ugly that is. Well, I've also got peonies planted here. The deer will not eat peonies, and the peonies come up and they cover up the daffodil foliage, so you don't see that either, and the deer won't eat them. And there you go, two great things in one spot. And then the crowning glory right here. And by the way, it is like a thorn of crowns, so respect it. This is one of my favorite beds that I've got, and this gets hot, hot afternoon sun. And I've got my daylilies here. They love the sun. They'll grow in half shade too and be perfectly fine. The nice thing about the daylily is the daylily will also work in a wet area. It will establish itself in a dry environment once it gets going there, and they're great as long as you pay attention to the deer population. The deer love the daylilies, but I love the daylilies more, so I spray mine with a repellent, and there are various ones on the market that you can use. The trick is using the deer repellent. It's not toxic, it doesn't hurt them, it just repels them and the rabbits. You have to do it after every rain because it will wash off. And consider it like this. Say if you're on a medication that has to be taken on a regular basis, treat your garden the same way. Being just kind of okay with it is not great. And you say, oh, the deer ate everything, I forgot to do that. Well, your daylilies are gone for the rest of the season unless it's a reblooming variety. But I've got these here, and I have mulched mine. I still have some weeds coming up in here, but the mulch really, really helps with that. Once the daylilies get going, I won't need to weed as much because it's so dense that there's no place for the weeds to grow. I love that aspect of it. But back to mulch. I use shredded hardwood mulch, which I like because it lasts a long time. The really fine mulch will wash away too quickly. The real chunky kind will keep your bulbs from coming up through it. It's just too chunky. And free mulch can be the most expensive thing that you ever put in your garden, because you'll get something that has got ground up walnut in it, which will actually kill some plants, or it's got the honeysuckle shrub or the honeysuckle vine or poison ivy in it, or a weed that you've never had in your garden, and all of a sudden you've got a maintenance nightmare. And so unless you don't value your time at all, don't go for the free mulch. Get someone reliable to deliver it to you, and get it about right now. I go in and I take out my weeds that are in there, then I put the mulch down, and then I'm pretty well good to go. In the backdrop, you see these sticks that are back here. Well, guess what these sticks are? Those are figs, that make the figs like you eat. They're typically not hardy in this area, but I mulch mine and they always come back from the base. We had such a mild winter, the green tips are showing. So I know that I've already got at least 5 feet of growth that has survived the winter here, which means I'll have more figs this year than ever before. Enjoy thyself, so saith the good gardener, and plant things that are tantalizing. I planted these because they remind me of Mississippi, and an heirloom garden doesn't have to be perfect as long as it's perfect for you. This is Charlie, by the way. He digs the holes and I do the plantings. We're over here by the roses, and in springtime, early spring, before they have set the buds, it's a good time to clean your roses up. But I wanted to point out something that's at the base. You see down here, that yellow flower that looks so pretty? That is marsh marigold. It's perennial, but it is absolutely will smother your garden, and it is almost impossible to get rid of. So I decided to just live with it. And I have planted, instead of low perennials with it, I plant the daylilies with it because I cannot compete with those. I plant astilbes with it because they will stay above it. If you've got low perennials, like, it will overtake even this golden lysimachia here. It's just, some fights aren't worth fighting, so choose them carefully. But here we are with the roses, and you can see I didn't clean it up really well last year. So what I do is I go in and I just do a little judicious pruning, not really shaping now because we're about a month late for that, but just want to get the old blooms off. And you can go through and shape. So see how it's sticking up high? Then I'm just cutting off bits, so it's kind of it's more uniform in height. That's the trick. Anyway, I think you get the idea of just cleaning that up. A lot of people think that they want to prune all of their roses and their butterfly bushes in the fall. No, because they will die in the winter. Both of those plants have got hollow stems, water will get down inside of them, they will explode. And then they wonder why they have so much damage in the springtime, and it's because of that generally. I'd rather it look a little ragged in the wintertime than be dead in the spring. And I also go ahead and put my rose fertilizer out at this time. I go ahead and I will spray with, say, an insecticidal soap if you want to go that way, or something stronger if you want to go that way. It's your choice. And to get ready, if you wait until you see problems, whether it's black spot or spider mites, you can't get ahead of it, particularly with the benign approach to it. Once you've got an infestation of anything, it will not control it. So you've got to do preventative maintenance like you do yourself. Everybody has got a wet area in your garden where everything dies, or you decided that's the ugly part of the garden. Well, for me, it's the most beautiful part of the garden because it's an opportunity. This was not a pond. I dug this out as I had a water reparations area here, which we pipe all of the water from the roof over here, the gutter water. And then I thought, I'll just make this thing bigger. And then I got the cattails showed up over here. And then guess what else? The peeper frogs showed up. And after the peeper frogs are through singing their songs in the spring, the bullfrogs start singing. And I've got red-winged blackbirds. I've got a fox that comes to drink out of this, so it becomes part of the habitat aspect of the garden. I love that part. And so I've got things on the top of my dam, so to speak, that are not wetland plants. Because the top of a dam around a pond, it will be the driest area in your whole garden. It looks like it would be wet because it's near water. Not the same thing. It is still the driest part because it sticks up. And in my wetland area, I've got a pond cypress. It hasn't leafed out yet. This tall, narrow trunk here, and it loves to grow right in the water. It's related to the ball cypresses that you see down in Louisiana that are perfectly hardy even in Chicago. So experiment a little bit. And then I've got underneath my birdhouse, I've got the beginnings of Japanese and Louisiana irises that are coming up. They love the wet area also. So this has become a happy area for me. I keep the embankment lightly mulched over there so I can have like my golden acorus grass that's growing back there. I picked up the same color with a Spirea thunbergia, which is blooming white now and has the same color foliage of that chartreuse foliage. Now you see the mound of mulch right here. That has got a burgundy and yellow striped leaf to it. That's Canna Lilies, which are not hardy out in the open here, but 1.5 feet of mulch on top of that in the wintertime will make this come back, and it's been there 7 years. So they come back. You can do that also with Agapanthus. But the trick is 1.5 feet of mulch before you get a hard freeze, and then you would be removing it about now. And beauty. This was blooming inside my house last Easter. And what I did after it finished blooming, I brought the pot out, and this is hyacinth by the way, and just stuck it right in the ground, because in a sunny area that's well drained, it will come back year after year. It will never be as big as it was when it was grown in a greenhouse, but it's pretty. It's doing as well as the dandelion. And so you see, I don't weed everything. You have to enjoy yourself. But having things like this in the garden that you normally would have thrown away, I think it appeals to me because it reminds me of last Easter. Well, these are the biggest flowers in the garden. I know you're looking at it thinking, that's a dead stump. Well, it is not. This is Perennial Hibiscus. There are a lot of great varieties out there, and they're not the tall ones that are 6 to 7 feet tall that you may have remembered. They're nice and uniform. These are maybe 3.5, 4 feet tall, nice and rounded. There's one variety called Perfect Storm that I like. So look for the varieties. Some even have burgundy foliage, which is what these have. And you say, well, why in the world, if it's perennial, would you leave all these stobs up? This is one of the latest perennials to put out in early summer. And if you don't leave the stobs, you don't know where they are. And then you'll accidentally step on the shoots that are coming up, or you'll try to plant something else there, or you'll mow over it. So I leave these as a warning, and I leave plenty of it because I don't want these messed up. But I've got them all across here, and these, by the way, are planted, I guess 5 or 6 feet apart because they do get big. It's a nice rounded mound, and the flowers can be up to 10 inches across. They are hardy in just about all parts of the country, and when they're blooming, it's like nothing else matters. They will stand drought once they get established, and they will also take wet feet, which I like. So they are quite adaptable to wetland areas and to dry areas. And to back them up, I've got just a miscanthus grass. Anything you like, an ornamental grass in the back kind of loosens it up and gives it a backdrop. So I've got the two things here that work really well with hardly any maintenance at all. Again, is more pretty, less work. And this looks like you know exactly what. This about a month ago. This behind me, this trimmed shrub, this hedge, is Rosa Sharon. I love it because it is the lowest maintenance of all flowering shrubs. Tough, tough, tough. It will even stand sea spray, but it also grows very rapidly. This is what it looked like before I trimmed it. These, by the way, are seed heads. They will seed all along the garden, and it is at my own peril that I leave it up all winter. But I like the way they look because it's like a beaded curtain, and because this is the bedroom back here, and I can see these through there, and the light, late afternoon light, will catch this tawny thing and turn it to gold. Beautiful. But this is a pink variety, and so these, by the way, you see I've cut these. They're down to, I guess, about 4.5 feet now. So that's what I cut them down to, below the window, because they will still get halfway up the window and bloom like crazy every single year. So if you don't cut it to here, then it's above the roof of the house, which you don't want. And people are afraid to prune sometimes. Don't be afraid. Go in there. You can brutalize a rose of Sharon. You can also brutalize the hydrangea paniculatas. But I leave them up all winter, and this is the nice uniform look I have. It'll be putting out, and it'll be beautiful. And when I'm looking out through that veil of pink flowers in the summertime, I'm happy. Well, here we are, back in the mulch bed again. And by the way, this is not just for maintenance, this is for magic. Because I talked about how you can use 1.5 feet of mulch to make cannas come back year after year in your garden in East Goshen. See the foliage that's coming up here. Agapanthus, lily of the Nile. Who can grow that here? I can, because I put 1.5 feet of mulch on it in the fall. That's the trick with that. And these are going to come back year after year. They've already been in for 4 years, and nobody will have it. It is magic. But the Agapanthus, and they call it lily of the Nile because it grows on the banks of the Nile. And as we talked about the wetland earlier, where the dam is the driest area, the banks along a stream are often the driest area too. But down here below, these don't like wet feet. So what I've done is I did a French drain that runs from the front of the bed all the way across. Then there is, I guess, about 2 feet of gravel in there. Then I did washed river rock on top, so it drains the water across, and the feet of the Agapanthus never get wet, and they always bloom. It is magic. Welcome to my front garden, which is on a very busy street, but if you couldn't hear the noise, you would think you were somewhere else. And I love all the foliage. You can see the different foliage colors here. Not much in the way of flowers, but lots and lots of foliage. That's very important. But I talked about earlier things that you can trim now, and that would be some of these things. But we'll take a little peek in here so you can see what I'm talking about, and I'll point them out. This is a gold mound spirea. Now I pruned this about a month ago, and it will still set bud and bloom like crazy this season with a nice chartreuse foliage. This is a red-leafed barberry. There are many, many varieties. There are even golden-leaf varieties of it. And I have completely trimmed this too, so it's not all ragged and doesn't get out of hand. So you can do that now. Now, back here, I have got this beautiful spirea that is blooming. This is a spring blooming shrub. You do not prune this now. Right after this is finished blooming, which will be in another maybe 10 days, then you completely prune it, and then the new foliage comes out, to give you an idea about the timing on that. But just notice the foliage, and imagine if all the foliage were green. It would not be very interesting. This is a very small front garden, but because of the play of light and shadow via the color of the foliage, I have created a dance in the garden. You can too. Look at the leaves. My mentor told me, Americans understand, she was from London, Americans understand flowers, they don't understand foliage, and there